Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Lesnik with Live Free Legal, and I am a survivor of domestic violence as well as a domestic violence attorney. If you are a woman navigating divorce, custody litigation, or financial abuse after a difficult marriage, this channel is designed to help you understand how the family court system actually works so you can protect yourself and your children. Before we jump in, if content like this is helpful to you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every week, I share legal education, courtroom strategy, and faith based encouragement specifically for women navigating high conflict divorce and post separation abuse. If you stay with me to the end of this video, I'm also going to show you where you can access a financial affidavit template, a financial affidavit calculator, and budgeting tools that can help you start organizing your case. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Family law varies by state, and watching this video does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you need legal advice about your specific situation, you should consult a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction. My goal in these videos is to help you better understand the legal system so you can better advocate for yourself and your children. So let's get into it. One of the most common questions I hear from women navigating divorce is, how much alimony will I receive? And that question makes perfect sense. When you are trying to figure out whether you can afford housing, groceries, utilities, childcare, and legal fees, you want some idea of what your financial future might look like. But here is something women are usually never told. Alimony is one of the least predictable areas of family law. Unlike child support, which usually follows a mathematical formula that's used in all of the states, spousal support, also called alimony, is often determined by judicial discretion. That means the judge looks at the circumstances of the marriage and decides whether alimony should be awarded and in what amount and for what duration. And that is exactly why the conversation we had in my last webcast about financial affidavits is so important. If you didn't check out that webcast, we talked about the importance of drafting a financial affidavit, what that is, what that looks like, and how to draft one that will help you conquer your Goliath in court. So check that out. The link to that webcast is in the description below. Because in many cases, your financial affidavit, your budget, and your documentation of the marital lifestyle become the foundation of the judge's decision on whether or not to award alimony. So another point of confusion for many people is that there are usually different types of spousal support. Two of the most common are temporary support and permanent or long-term alimony. Temporary spousal support or maintenance is often ordered while the divorce case is still pending. So divorce cases can take months or even years to resolve. Temporary support helps ensure that the financially dependent spouse can maintain basic stability during the litigation process. It may help cover expenses like housing, food, childcare, and utilities while the case is ongoing, and may be called different things depending on what state you live in. It may be called a spousal support, it may be called maintenance, it may be called pendente lite, it may be called PSS. It just depends on where you live. It may be called something else. But the bottom line is it is temporary support for you. Okay. Temporary support is sometimes calculated more quickly and may rely on guideline formulas or temporary support calculators in certain states. Permanent alimony, on the other hand, is decided at the final resolution of your case or at the time or after divorce. Okay. Despite the name permanent, it does not always mean it's going to last forever. And in many cases, it simply means longer term support, which may last for several years, depending on the length of the marriage and the financial circumstances of the parties. Some awards of alimony are rehabilitative, meaning they give the dependent spouse time to obtain education, job training, re enter the workforce, or possibly get to the age of retirement so that they can collect on their pension or Social Security funds. Other awards may last longer. After long marriages where one spouse sacrificed career opportunities to raise children or support the other spouse's career. Many people assume there must be a simple calculator that determines alimony, but in most states, that is not how the system works. Instead, courts evaluate a variety of factors, including the length of the marriage, each spouse's income and earning capacity, the marital standard of living, contributions to the household or to a spouse's career, whether one spouse left the workforce to raise children, the age and health of the parties, the financial needs of the dependent spouse. And every state is going to have different factors, but those are general idea of what the courts are going to be looking at and considering. So instead of plugging numbers into a formula, the judge is evaluating the story of the marriage. And that is why documentation matters. Your financial affidavit, your expenses, and your financial evidence help the court understand the financial reality of the relationship. So, another factor that can influence alimony in some states is marital misconduct, or sometimes called fault. Even though many states allow no fault divorce, and in the state that I'm in, North Carolina, we have no fault divorce, but we do have marital misconduct as it relates to alimony. So, certain behaviors during marriage can still impact whether alimony is awarded. Some examples of misconducts courts can consider include adultery, as we just talked about, domestic violence or cruel treatment. So that would be even verbal abuse. We call it indignities, emotional abuse, name calling, abandonment. When we say abandonment in this context, we legitimately mean packing things up, leaving, going to Hawaii, going to Australia, going to another country, never to be heard from again, no idea where this person is, don't know where they went, they don't contact you, they don't contact the children, they don't provide financial support. This is not abandonment like an abuser uses as a threat, right? If you leave me, I'm going to sue you for abandonment. You're not leaving for a legitimate purpose. You're not leaving to escape abuse. This is literally someone packing their things up and you're like never hearing from them again, or you're not hearing from them for an extended period of time. You don't know where they are. They're not following through with their parental or marital duties to support. Okay, so I just want to make that distinction. Another form of misconduct might be substance abuse, addictions. So they may have addictions to gambling or alcohol or other substances, financial misconduct, or wasting marital assets. And we talked about this earlier. In some states, including North Carolina, adultery can significantly affect alimony. So, if the dependent spouse or the spouse who needs to receive alimony committed adultery, that can actually bar them from receiving alimony. But if the supporting spouse committed adultery, the court may be required to award alimony if the other spouse qualifies as financially dependent and the supporting spouse can afford to pay alimony. Now, again, like I said, there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, adultery can be a big deal when it comes to alimony. So, if you think that your spouse may be having an affair prior to leaving or separating from that spouse, that would be a very good opportunity for you to gather as much data or evidence that you can before you actually separate, because the court's going to be looking at, did the adultery occur prior to the date of separation? So gather as much evidence as you can. Maybe you need to hire a private investigator. Maybe you need to take screenshots on his phone. Maybe you need to get him to admit to something in writing through text. Maybe you need to record a conversation that you have with him where he admits to that. Maybe you can download phone bills showing that he's been texting or on the phone with someone in the middle of the night repeatedly. Whatever that evidence is, be collecting that now because you may need it later. Okay, so this is why documenting issues like domestic violence, financial abuse, coercive control, or infidelity can sometimes be important in spousal support cases because courts cannot consider evidence that is never presented. Okay, so there are certain states that do use alimony calculators. Just like in child support cases, we plug in certain factors, we plug in income information, and we hit compute, and the state automatically spits out a number. So there are some states that do use spousal support or alimony calculators. While most states rely heavily on judicial discretion, meaning the judge gets to decide, some states do use guideline formulas or calculators, especially for temporary spousal support. And these states include Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Illinois, Kansas, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, and Louisiana. So if you live in one of those states, your state's going to use some form of a calculator or a guideline, whether that would be for temporary support or potentially for longer term alimony. Even in those states, however, the calculator is usually just a starting point. Judges still have the authority to adjust the amount depending on the circumstances of the case. If you did not live in one of the states that I just listed, then your amount of alimony will be determined based on the discretion of the judge. In my next webcast, I'm going to get into a lot more detail on how the courts actually calculate alimony. What are they looking at when they're figuring out what's a reasonable amount of alimony or spousal support to award each month? And I'm going to get into the details of that with you so that you can try to come up with a reasonable expectation or prediction of what you might be awarded in spousal support or what you could request in negotiations or mediation for spousal support or alimony. So there are also online tools that can help you explore possible ranges of support, and those are in the description below. For example, marital.laws.com has an alimony calculator, spousalalimoneycalculator.com, and then custody exchange financial planning tools. And again, they're in the description below for you to access. Now, be mindful. These tools cannot predict the outcome of your case, but they can help you understand how support is sometimes estimated. And that's the key word, estimated. These tools are not going to give you an exact figure, right? So you cannot hold these in stone. It just gives you kind of an idea of where you may fall as far as a support award. And then there is also the AAML alimony formula. So some calculators use a guideline familiar to many family law attorneys called the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers formula, often referred to as the ML formula. This formula is not law in most states, but it is sometimes used as a rough starting point when estimating possible support. So here's how it works. First, take 30% of the higher earning spouse's income. Second, take 20% of the lower earning spouse's income. Then subtract the second number from the first. So I'm going to give you an example. If one spouse earns $120,000 per year and the other earns $40,000 per year, 30% of $120,000 equals $36,000. 20% of $40,000 equals $8,000. Subtract those numbers and you get $28,000 per year, which equals roughly $2,333 per month in estimated support. And I'm going to put that example for you down in the description below because I know it can be hard to hear and process, but if you see it, that might be a little bit easier to digest. Again, this is only a very rough estimate, and courts frequently adjust these numbers depending on the circumstances of the case. And again, maybe taking into consideration marital misconduct, where the judges have the discretion to increase the amount of alimony or even increase the duration that alimony is paid. So, reality check about alimony. One of the hardest conversations I have with clients is about expectations. So many women assume alimony will fully replace the lifestyle they had during the marriage, but courts are often dealing with limited financial resources. Even when calculators provide a range, courts often award support toward the lower end or middle of that range. Another key factor courts must consider is the supporting spouse's ability to pay. If the supporting spouse earns only $30,000 to $40,000 per year, there may simply not be enough income to support two separate households. The same issue can arise if the supporting spouse is unemployed, disabled, retired, or experiencing significant financial hardship. Even when the dependent spouse clearly has financial need, the court must still consider whether the other spouse realistically has the ability to pay. And if they don't have the ability to pay, even if you have need, even if you are dependent, it is not likely that support will be awarded. So, I want to speak directly to the spiritual battle many Christian women feel during this process. Many women feel guilty asking for financial support, but scripture reminds us that God cares deeply about provision and justice. Matthew 6:26 says, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them." If God cares about sparrows, he certainly cares about how you will provide for yourself and your children. Psalm 146:7 reminds us that God upholds the cause of the oppressed. Seeking financial stability after years of sacrifice in a marriage is not selfish. Often it is part of restoring balance after years of inequity or abuse. If you are trying to organize your financial information and prepare for court, I have created tools to help you do exactly that. Inside my Empower Her membership, you can access blank financial affidavit templates, financial affidavit calculators, monthly budget worksheets, legal education on alimony, child support, and financial evidence. These tools are designed to help survivors prepare their financial disclosures strategically instead of guessing. You can learn more at www.livefreelegal.com or in the link below. If you are navigating divorce after abuse, please remember this: information is power. The more you understand how courts evaluate financial need, income, and marital lifestyle, the stronger your position becomes in court. And even more importantly, God sees the sacrifices you made. He sees the years you invested in your family, and He promises to walk with you through this season. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Remember to like us, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We will see you here next Tuesday at 7 p.m. for our next webcast on how the courts generally are going to calculate alimony or spousal support. Thanks. See you next time.